down in the southeast of Canton collecting insurance and that. We'd be around and we'd see them. And my father would always say, there's no difference between them. We're both the same. Skin's a little darker, skin's a little lighter, but there's no difference. I'm going to read for you what's really got me touched when I had to meet with her after that. A letter she wrote to the leadership of Stark County, which I think tells the whole story of where the black people are coming from. That we need to respect them and feel for what they're going through. Throughout my educational experiences, from Martin High School to my college journey at Walsh University, and every job that I've had since graduation, I'm always one of the few minorities in those spaces. Or should I say, I can sometimes be the only black person or black woman in those spaces. My first thought is, do others in the room notice this? If they do, does my appearance make them uncomfortable? Because like in many of my previous experiences, most white people don't encounter minorities on a consistent basis, especially outside of public community settings. The other thought that crosses my mind is whether this space is inclusive enough for my presence. Because like many of other minorities, we always feel that we have to assimilate to the dominant culture to be accepted. The worst part about being one of the few black people, and sometimes the only, is realizing you're expected to speak, educate, and advocate for all black people's experiences as though we are monolithic. But just like any other group of people, our individual experiences are unique. So I cannot and will not speak for all people who look like me. Another aspect of my experiences that often leaves me discouraged is the lack of representation within leadership roles. As a young black woman who is coming into leadership in Stark County, it's hard to believe the change you want to see is going to happen when there are little to no people who, like you, that can relate or even understand your experiences. As a first-generation college student, I have overcome many obstacles within my lifetime. Statistically speaking, I should not be here where I am today. Although my journey is unique to me, it is one that many others may be able to relate to. Stark County is a call for action. This is not because it is the top of the headlines, but because it's necessary as we look forward towards an environment conducive for everyone to work, play, and stay. To my black elders and the ones who have come before me, I know it is hard, and it can be unwelcoming. I also know that you are tired, but you cannot show up for yourself. And please show up for me. Show up for the others who look up to us, and show up for the ones who will see your leadership and want to be like you one day. To my black peers and colleagues, show up even if you are the only one in the room. Show up because our voices and representation matter. And show up because opportunities like these will help you grow more as an individual. Finally, to my white leaders, peers, and colleagues, when strengthening and reconciling our community is the goal, diversity will automatically be the outcome. So in order to truly value an inclusive environment, you must prioritize having diverse voices, especially from the black community, at your tables and include them in your prominent decision making. It is easy and comfortable to stay connected to those you are used to, but it is harder to show empathy when you do not have real relationships outside of those who look like you. I will leave you with this. Who are you inviting to your households? And who are you doing life with? Because your world is only as diverse as your dinner table. Serena has a background from Walsh University, graduating there in government, foreign affairs, and history and dean's list. She's also was head of I'll let her list all the organizations, but she was head of the student government, the student leadership, the black community. She's also a Ohio Army National Guard right now, currently until the present time. As a soldier record, records events and contact expansion transfer promotions using Army AKO system software. She's also been very involved in chamber meetings, Strengthening Start, Sisters of Charity, United Way Women's Committee, Business Research Network. She's an event leader. She's a program advocate and grant writing. She was an internship employer relations coordinator at Walsh University, which I met her, and also in the career services. She's a great young lady. I look up to her as a person that needs to be introduced throughout the community to lead how we understand what the black are really going through, and that we epitomize that, because be a white person and go into a black bar or a black grocery store, and how do you feel? Do we ever think about that? No, we don't. But I mean, to hear her talk about it and really let you know, and it's our job to get this to happen. Get the inclusiveness of the black people. With that, she has two guests who work with her. Katie Remark is here, and Shae Gatlin is also here. Serena, it's yours.
Hi guys, I'm Serena. Thank you for that lovely introduction. That was a lot, but I definitely appreciate it. So again, yeah, I am the outreach director for the Martin Center over on the southeast side of Canton. I literally just got there this past January, and it's funny that the things that we are currently going through right now has kind of like made my job even harder than it was supposed to be. And so basically, out of everything that has happened and meeting with Ron, given COVID-19, but then the racial tensions. If you look at COVID-19 itself, it is affecting Black and Latino communities more than any other racial group in the United States. And so when you look at that in itself, that's literally bringing the racial issues within our community to the light. And then with Ahmaud Arbery's killing, with Breonna Taylor's killing, and then George Floyd, that was in a 2-week span, right? And so you have an entire community that is suffering from this, suffering from the trauma, suffering from the different things that are going on in our community. And so for me, this has been a passion of mine since I've been at Walsh University, because I have worked at, I went to school at Marlington High School. If you guys know anything about Marlington, predominantly white, just like Perry High School. If you know anything about Walsh University, it is predominantly white. And so I've always been in spaces where I'm always the only. And so essentially, when I got to Walsh University, I really wanted to be someone that kind of advocated for this. Why am I always the only? And then, why do I not feel comfortable in these spaces when I'm always the only? And so I actually initiated the Diversity Council at Walsh University. It was a student-led one, and we worked alongside our diversity officer at the time. And so basically it was really just to get a group of students together, Black, white, Latino, LGBT groups, anybody who is considered a minority. We wanted to have a representation and really talk about the ways in which our groups can be inclusive. And so from that, now I'm at the Martin Center, and you see the marches happen and the protests and whatever you want to put a name to it, the riots, whatever you want to call it. But all of that was coming to the horizon. And then you had young adults who are literally my age or younger who are the ones that are leading these right now. And everyone's talking to me that I'm in all these spaces. They're like, is this different from when Martin Luther King was marching? Is it different from when people like that were marching back in the 60s? And in my head, I think it is. Because Martin Luther King, he was a little older than what we are. I'm only 25 years old. Shae, you're 28, and Katie's 24. So literally, I feel like we're in a battle where we are feeling like our government has kind of failed us. As young people, we are feeling like our government failed us. Because the reality is, our government has not even taught us about the realities that went on back in the day. I had to find that out as a college student. I didn't learn that in high school. And so essentially we kind of got together a group of young people who wanted to really talk about these issues and what do we see our communities looking like when we are in your positions, right? And so here I am today with our Be the Change Advocates is what we've been calling ourselves. Essentially, I just got a group of young people who are kind of passionate about racial injustice and social justice, and we have just been meeting for the past 2 months and kind of just talking about what does it look like in our own spaces. I'm at the Martin Center. Shae's at Canton Parks and Rec. Katie's at Ennis Major. And so what does it look like for us to already be in the spaces that we're in and we're advocating for these issues? And so I'll let them take away about the things that we gave you on the sheet about like our mission and our purpose. And I'll kind of just talk about what exactly we are doing and the action steps that we essentially see the community taking. Shae, you want to go with that mission?
Okay, so like she said, my name is Shae Gatlin. I am our community members advocate. Basically, like our mission is just to enhance education of the local community on social injustice, racial bias, and to work to create an environment that promotes the inclusion of minority individuals.
And I'm Judy Remark. I am the Communications and Allyship Advocate. Where I'm coming from this is really just to bring their stories into the people that I'm surrounded with. And I realize that a lot of times I don't interact with people that are different than me. So I want to hear their stories and take them and change everything around me. So anyway, our purpose is since there is a racial and generational gap of those who are doing the prominent decision making in our communities, we are well aware of the need for policy change, while there has been a lack of efficient education within our schools and community on the reality of the world around us. So with policy reform, educational programming, and representation, our mission will be fulfilled.
So that's kind of us in a nutshell, and so we take it from 3 different angles: policy, educational programming, and then representation. And the representation part is something that's very important to all of us because we're all the young millennials. And so what we're seeing, especially me as an outreach director, so I'm constantly meeting with executive directors all the time. And so literally there's probably a 20-year gap every time I'm meeting with them. And so for me, I'm talking to these organizations about, okay, what do your boards look like? And I understand there's a history of what boards look like. The people who were on your boards were the ones that were giving the funding. I know at 25 years old, I don't got the money to give the funding, but I also know that I relate to your population that you're serving. Because a lot of times there's a lot of youth organizations, and so what does it look like to have us on your boards advocating for the fact that we are just as young as the ones that you are serving, and so our voices matter just as much, even though we don't have the financial backing to be on those boards. And so representation is very important. And then just to give you an idea, a picture of all of our members, we have Skylar Parks, in which Ron Mance knows. He's a graduate from Walsh University. He has his master's in business association. He's our youth development advocate. One of the things that he really thinks is important is just developing our youth right now. We know that our youth are going through a lot socially and emotionally, and so he wants to really create programming that is surrounding our youth. And so then we have Richie Harper. Richie Harper, he's a graduate from Kent State and also Georgetown University, where he got his law degree and will be sitting for the bar in September. And so Richie is actually our law and policy advocate, and so he has been working alongside the mayor's office and the chief of police and really talking about how he can bring some policy change. What does it actually look like for the police to reform what they're doing? Obviously, there's something that's going wrong, and so what can he actually bring to the table that can be reformed? Kylie Cheatwood, she's our education and training advocate. And so what that really looks like is creating events that is allowing our communities to actually get educated on what's going on. She hosted the teach-in on racial justice actually about 2 weeks ago downtown Canton, and that was a phenomenal event that was partnered with Kent State Stark. And then we have Danielle Williams, who works alongside Shae. She's our community members advocate, and really just rallying community members to come to events that are happening around our community and really just get them educated on the things that we need to be doing. And then we have Jan Almasi. He's a graduate from Walsh also. He is the founder and creator of the Apex Communications Network. And so really he just talks to a lot of our community leaders that are out in that are out in Stark County. So whether that's the heads of Canton Chamber, whether that's the heads of West Stark, just different people that are in those spaces that he has been working on alongside of in his Apex position. And so, that's kind of the reality of what we're doing in a nutshell and what we see the changes need to happen. And so how we've been doing that We've just been working alongside and kind of just seeing how we fit in. And so I recently just got employed with this company called Enlighten Solutions. They are a diversity and inclusion consulting firm, and they're a nonprofit. And so they're up in Cleveland. They're very much like the Coming Together Stark County, but they are more so the diversity and inclusion officers that are actually doing the strategic work of changing organizations from the ground up. Why do you not have minorities in manager positions? Why are they only your staff? Why do they not stay in your jobs more than a year? And so really they help kind of really evaluate your organization as a whole. And so I've been working alongside them for the past month or so, because that was something I was like, Stark County needs, and then I found out that they were doing it, and so now they actually brought me on as the director of Stark County. So I'll be working with a few organizations to see how we can implement Enlighten Solutions. The next organization is the NAACP. They were the ones that Richie was working alongside of with the mayor's office on how to bring that police reform and talk to the chief of police on what to do in that aspect. Our second one is Start Fresh, or our next one is Start Fresh. That is just someone that I already had a partnership with in my role, and so they're the ones that have been pushing that courageous conversations. I'm not sure if you guys knew about that, but it has been a year and a half that they've been doing these courageous conversations on race relations. And so those conversations have really been educational. What is redlining? Why were minorities getting pushed out of their housing when they were living in other areas? What is blockbusting? What happened on the Cherry Street and the northeast side, and why was Route 30 put in and then all minorities in that area were displaced? Because before that happened, minorities were in two-parent households, and now if you look at that area, they're all in single-parent households now. And so that's kind of the education that Start Fresh was really implementing, and they will be doing another series of that. And then today we actually have a meeting with Canton Charge, because Canton Charge has been doing a lot of diversity and inclusion work, and so we are just coming alongside them and helping them figure out what are those other organizations that they can do some simplified training and education with them. And then Kent State Start, again, they were the ones that did the teach-in back in July. The Martin Center, Canton Parks and Rec, and Third Street Community Church are the ones that we all, me and Shae represent, because those are our actual employers that have been kind of already doing that work, and so they have just been working alongside of us. So that's basically it in a nutshell. Shae, I know you represented those first two events. If you want to hit on what those were.
Okay, so the first event, one of the first events that even Serena was at in Kylie, was all the protesting and things that were going on, and then things started to seem like it was rioting and things like that. Kylie and myself had came up with an idea of how about instead of doing all these, just walking the streets, sometimes you gotta go and you have to talk, because we can talk about things that are happening, and yes, we're not gonna knock that, we're not gonna put that to the back burner, but what about the things that are going on here in Canton, or here in Perry, or here in Massillon, or in Jackson? What about the things in Stark County that's going on that needs to be changed? We can touch bases about everything that's happening around the world, but we do need to talk about what's going on here. So we actually had a peace talk. It was just about 4 or 5 of us ladies. We just kind of came together, and we just talked about what is it that we could do to make the change. Everybody can say, oh, well, we need to make a change, but what is it that we need to do? What steps could we take to actually make a change, instead of, we can yell, but that's really not gonna get the picture. We need to sit down and do the work. So we kind of we're talking even to community members, you guys are out here too, but what is it that you're doing? Are you voting? Are you filling out your census? Are you, are you coming to council meetings? Are you actually trying to make a change? And then what else could we do for our youth? our youth right now, like the generation, there is a generation gap. You know, you have, if you go to some places, you have like, they are the elders, and then now look at us, we're just in here like, well, what about the, you know, the class in between? So that right there, we kind of just talked about just basically peace. How could we do it peacefully and get it done the right way? And then we also had a Black Beauty Matters photo shoot. It was very awesome. It was just like a lot of people coming out, and just a lot of different photographers coming out and just taking snaps, family snaps, all women snaps, all men snaps, and then everyone together, just basically to show like it's not just about the color of our skin, but who we are as a person. So we did do that on June 13th as well. It turned out really good. We did that in downtown Canton.
Yeah, and one of the biggest reasons for that shoot was just this idea that if you don't have minorities in your spaces, like Ron read in my statement release, is that you won't know how minorities are portrayed. There's too many times in the news where you're always seeing them being called thugs because they're protesting, them being called gangbangers because of shootings and violence or whatever the case may be. There's always a narrative that's put on minorities within the media. And so really the idea behind the Black Beauty Matters photo shoot is to show and showcase families, Black love, Black educators, Black women being empowered, Black men and their power. And so really that was kind of the idea, because and especially one of the things what we did is we did it on June 13th, but then we released all the photos on June 19th, because that's Juneteenth. That is the African Americans' freedom holiday. That's our Independence Day. And so I know that even this year, this is like the first time that a lot of Americans even found out what Juneteenth even was. And so it was just one of those things that we wanted to slowly bring education in a way to people to see that, because we knew there were a lot of people. I mean, COVID-19 is happening, we're all in the house, everyone's on social media. So why not blast the social media with this idea that Black beauty matters, and not this idea that we're thugs or we're gangbangers or whatever the case may be. We wanted to change that narrative, and so that was the idea behind that. And if you read on, I had released that statement with Leadership Stark County more so because I was kind of frustrated. I was in their spotlight class. If you know anything about Leadership Stark County, I was in their junior spotlight class, and George Floyd had got killed that Monday, and then our class was that Wednesday. And literally, we kind of went through the class, we just went through the class like any normal day. But as a minority, this is sitting heavy on me. We're just not gonna address it. I mean, I see you guys on social media posting that there's protests and Black Lives Matter, but no one's addressing it in our class. And I'm not saying dedicate the whole class to it, but at least acknowledge it, especially because I wasn't the only minority there. There's three other minorities in our class. And so the fact that it wasn't acknowledged, I kind of emailed our leadership and said, I'm kind of upset that you didn't acknowledge it. And so what kind of came out of this conversation, me and Skylar, our youth development advocate, me and him had a conversation with our director of Wise Stark, and we basically kind of just talked about what does it look like for Wise Stark to come alongside and be supportive of minorities that they're technically serving. And so what came out of it was me and Skylar decided to release statements. Skylar released a video in his statement, and I just released the statement that Ron just read. And then now, slowly, because they know that we created this kind of group or whatever, Wise Stark is looking at implementing a diversity and inclusion council. And not just for minorities in the Black community, but what does it look like? If we're promoting events, why aren't we thinking about the disabled population? We need to make sure that any event that we have is wheelchair able. We need to make sure that representation of women are sitting on your boards, representation of all minorities. And so that's kind of the idea behind the Diversity and Inclusion Council with Wise Stark. So literally from me calling them out, that is kind of how like things have kind of came together. And then I did a Your World is Only as Diverse as Your Dinner Table sermon at Rotary Jackson. And my church, the Rotary Community Church that I work for, we are actually a branch of Rotary Jackson. And so basically what happened was our pastor essentially said, now I get why you guys are fighting for racial reconciliation. What can I do? And so he conducted a listen and learn for 5 weeks and had minority pastors come and speak. And so really my sermon was about, really, you can give minorities positions and you can give them jobs, you can do all these things, but honestly, you're never really going to know a minority's experience if you don't have true relationship with them. And so who are you inviting into your households, and who are you actually doing life with? And then from there, the teaching that we already talked about, and then we had a financial literacy class that was for the Black community, because again, when you look at racial gaps economically, it's a racial issue as well. And so that's kind of like what we've been doing in a nutshell. And I mean, honestly, we meet once a week and kind of just talk about how can we be changing the systems that we're already a part of, and slowly bring some change to it. And I appreciate Katie. And I want to, I'm going to put her on the spot, but I appreciate her because one of the things, she was struggling with her family, who just doesn't get what's going on right now, right? And so she just really wanted to be like, can I be in a space where I'm actually building relationships with minorities and begin to learn from them? And so essentially, she kept asking, like, what is my role in this? What is my role? And I'm like, allyship. We need you to be an ally. Like, literally teaching other white people, what does it look like to just be an ally? Because I know for me, I would say when I first got into this diversity and inclusion work, is that I never looked at white people or other minorities other than Black people being allies. That was only a term for like the LGBT group or any other group, but it wasn't like for racial groups. And so what does it look like to be an ally? And one of our biggest, to like kind of close out, is just one of our biggest things is it's not enough to not be a racist. You have to fight for anti-racism. And like, there's just so many times I know, because I've been in so many white spaces, that there's comments and there's like, I'm not racist, but like, you're still condoning racist practices. And so if you're not fighting for anti-racism, you're condoning racist practices. And so that's kind of like what we talk about all the time. Like, what does it look like to truly help people get the picture of being an anti-racist? And so, I mean, that's us in a nutshell. And again, I just appreciate Katie for coming alongside us, because I know how uncomfortable this work is. It's something that it's emotionally draining, but just the fact that she was willing and open to this, and I say that as in I am so appreciative that you guys invited us into this space and allowing us to even talk on this issue as well.